Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 668, and today's date is May 15th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Economic Recovery Illusion is Over, U.S. Government Recovery Collapses. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand the United States government central bankers are continually pushing the recovery illusion out to everyone, convincing them that yes, everything that we say, everything that we do, everything that we present to you, all our statistical numbers, GDP, inflation, unemployment, this is what you need to believe in. And especially, please believe in the stock market, because this is where we want everyone looking. And we can see over time, they have been continuing this theme. And what's happening right now is that the manipulated economic numbers are not jiving with what's really going on in the economy. And there's no way to explain all of this. And they're just continuing on. And as we know, the government never likes to say, okay, yeah, we're collapsing, we're having a problem. No, they'll just continue on with the lie. They'll put another lie on top of a lie. And we've seen this in the past. And when we start looking at these numbers and what's been going on, we see that, yeah, things are moving in two different directions. We have the illusionary statistical numbers, they're moving in one direction. And then we have what we're seeing and what's being reported on moving in a different direction. I mean, look at this. We have the UMich consumer sentiment. It completely crashed. It dropped to 88.6, and they were expecting a 95.9. Now, these expectations are always above and beyond of what's really happening here. And when we look at this, this is the biggest miss on record and biggest month-on-month drop since December 2012. Higher income expectations are starting to plunge at their lowest in 7 months, and household finances are seen as the worst since July of 2014. People right now, they are very concerned over employment. A lot of people are hearing rumblings about layoffs, that their jobs might be in jeopardy, and we're starting to see that job optimism has completely imploded. The percentage of respondents to University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Survey that think themselves or their spouses that one of them will lose a job over the next 5 years. And this has soared to the highest since 2009. People out there are worried. They're worried that they're not going to have their jobs. And I don't think it's going to take 5 years. I'm going to say we're going to see many more mass layoffs coming up in the next year and the next year after that. I mean, we don't know exactly when this collapse is going to occur, but everything leading up to it, we're going to see things completely and rapidly fall apart. So now either the BLS is lying or the workers are lying. So which is it? Which is the problem here? And I'm going to say it is the government, because it's so easy to manipulate the numbers. The people are working. Why would they lie about losing their jobs or not feeling comfortable? It would make no sense. So right now we can see we are heading in a direction. People are in a direction where people are worried. We're heading in a direction where the entire system is starting to fall apart. I mean, even the person at UMich, Curtin, is saying the majority of declines this size occurred in recession time period. And he doesn't expect consumer spending to retrench at any time. I mean, we're seeing that right now, since people are so worried, they're not going out and spending the money. They're keeping their money. They're protecting themselves because they're very worried. They're not going out and purchasing the house. They're not going out and purchasing the automobile. They're not going out purchasing the big ticket electronic item. Everyone is being very cautious at this time because they see and they hear and they know that something's not right. Something is going on. And those people who have been sending resumes out going, okay, you know what? Since the unemployment rate has come down to 5.4%, this is a great time to go out there and look for a job. People have been sending their resumes out, looking to bump up their salary, and they're not finding it. A lot of the people are having a very tough time. They're sending the resume out, and they're getting no response. And if they do get a response, it's for the same or even lower pay than what they were getting. And we see there are more layoffs coming. I mean, the Patterson School District in New Jersey is laying off 335 people. Rembrandt Enterprises, 231. Fairpoint Communications, 219. I mean, the government is telling us, no, layoffs. There are no layoffs. Everyone's working. And then you have private firms who are looking into this, like Challenger Grain Christmas, and they're saying, no, layoffs. They're increasing. They're the worst that we've ever seen. And of course, the government is out there convincing us that real estate's fine, retail is fine. And when we look at retail, and we've been reporting on this, we're seeing it decline. We're seeing a lot of stores close. And over the last 5 years, over 20% of the initial gains in retail sales have been removed by serial downward revisions in later months. Well, that makes sense, because what we're looking at is stores closings in retail, people being laid off in retail, and sales declining. And then we look at what the government is doing. They're going back in time and revising the numbers. So they tell you, ooh, sales are fantastic. And then they go back a little bit later and they revise them down. For over 65% of the time, a good number prints, stocks rally, and everything is absolutely awesome. And everyone believes this. They put that out there. And then a month or two later, they go back and they revise the number down. Do you know how many times they've done this? Well, they've done this 35 times since 2010. What does this tell you? This tells you we're living in a world of an illusion. Every single time they're telling us that everything is fine, it isn't. It's a lie, and they revise the number down. And we can see that retail is not improving. If it's improving, we would see stores expanding, opening up in more different in different locations, in strip malls and malls. But we're seeing stores leaving the strip malls, leaving the malls, and laying off their people. I mean, when we look at the government, they're telling us everyone's working. We're at 5.4%, and they're expecting this to go down to 4-something% in the next year or so. And of course, you know, anytime they predict these numbers like the GDP, and they're telling us that this year it's going to be 2.5 or 3%, we're already in the negatives. You know this is all BS. And we can see right now that every single company is affected by what's going on here. I mean, McDonald's right now, Moody's downgraded McDonald's, their credit rating, from A2 to A3 because of their sales, their buybacks on their stocks. And right now they're saying, yeah, we're looking at the situation and we're going to have to downgrade them. When have you ever heard McDonald's downgraded? I mean, think about this. Think about what's going on here. And we see in the corporate media, as they're talking about housing, they're even saying something weird is going on here with housing. Something doesn't make sense. Because none of this is making any sense. Because if all the people are employed at 5.4%, this means people are making an income. This means people should be going out and spending their money. They're feeling safe in their jobs. Retail should be expanding, which we do not see. Housing should be expanding, which we do not see. When I say housing is expanding, I mean people are going out to take mortgages, and mortgage companies are hiring people left and right because they cannot keep up with the demand. We are seeing the opposite. Mortgage companies are laying off people because there is no demand. Bloomquist admitted that the FHA insured loans, a favorite among the first-time buyers, basically is seeing very weak volume. The first quarter of this year is absolutely awful. And they said when you compare it to a year ago, it's not where the economy should be if we're in a recovery. Something isn't right. RealtyTrack also recorded the highest volume of non-owner occupant buyers. Investors, foreign investors, those people who are getting the free money from who? The Fed. Investor activity continues to represent a disproportionately high share of all home sales activity in the housing recovery. Where are the people? The everyday American? Non-existent. What does this tell us? This tells us that this whole entire housing market is being driven by the central bank. That's it. It's not driven by the economy and the people. CoreLogic is showing that all cash sales are very high at this time, but a lot of them are trying to pull out of the market. They're trying to sell off their homes, and they're having a very tough time finding the everyday American to sell to. And we see a lot of insiders. They know when to sell because they know what's coming. And they always unload right before the system comes completely crumbling down. We see it in the real estate market. We see it in the housing market. And the banks right now, they're doing the same thing. They're continually investing in subprime. So what we're seeing right now is all these homes that were purchased in cash, they're trying to unload them. They're having a tough time. Credit is not really flowing at this point in time. They introduced new programs to get people to purchase, but it's not really working out very well. And they're continually pushing the idea that we're in this recovery. But what we're seeing, and we're seeing that other companies and the corporate media, they're starting to mention this in their stories because what we're getting ready for is this entire system to come crumbling down. We see manufacturing. May's Empire Manufacturing printed a disappointing 3.09 against expectations of a bounce to 5, and we didn't make it. This is the fourth miss in a row, and basically we haven't seen anything like this since January of 2008. Hope plunged back to 3-month lows. I mean, we're seeing a complete disaster. Tech spending right now is at 15 months lows. And this is the biggest month-on-month decline since November of 2008. U.S. industrial production. Well, guess what? It is the weakest print since May 2009. I mean, April industrial production printed at negative 0.3%. This is the 5th monthly drop in a row, the longest streak since the Great Recession. To add pain to this, capacity utilization missed expectations, falling to its lowest since January of 2014. Machinery production fell 0.9% for the largest decrease with durables. The production of other manufacturing industries fell by 0.4%. And when we look at this, this makes sense. Because we see the Baltic Dry Index, it fell down to 589, and then all of a sudden it bounced back up to 634. But well below where the other years were, at 900, at 1100, at 1400. But the question is, how did this bounce occur? I mean, did everyone start ordering raw materials and everyone start production and manufacturing because people are purchasing? No. What happened was the cap size rates for bulk carriers climbed to the highest rate since January, and it pushed the Baltic Dry Index up. And right now those rates are at the highest level, and this is what happened. And we saw this happen a couple months ago where it pushed it up, and then the Baltic Dry Index started to fall back down again because production was getting weaker and weaker, and they didn't need the raw material. And this is what we are seeing right now. We see and we know the central banking system would love to get rid of cash. And we see an economist of Citibank and others saying we should just get rid of cash. That is the problem in our society. Criminals use cash, and if we can have just everything electronic, that would be better off. There is a proposed law in Denmark, and this could be the first step towards an economic revolution that sees physical currencies and normal bank accounts abolished. The Danish proposal would simply allow shops to refuse payments in cash and insist that the customer use a debit card or other means of electronic payment. The move is a step closer to a cashless society, and once all money exists only in bank accounts, monitored or even directly controlled by the government, the authorities will be able to encourage us to spend more when the economy slows and spend less when it is overheating. In the future, your account may be, and this could happen, it might not be held in a bank, but with the government or the central bank. This is what they're trying to do. Banks will still exist, they will still lend money, but they will get their funds from the central bank, not the depositors. They're trying to change everything. They want to control the entire system. They want to control your money. They want to make sure you cannot take it out in cash, because then it's out of their control. And they're using up all these excuses that cash is for the criminals. If you're holding cash, it's no good. You can't keep cash in a safety deposit box. And we can see this is continually going on and on. And as we know why all this is going on and the private Western central bank systems is completely falling apart, China and Russia are continually making deals all around the globe. China is going to strengthen their cooperation with Afghanistan, and they're going to take measures to protect personnel and organizations in each of the countries. Their New Deal is going to help create a secure and sound environment for building the Silk Road economic belt and promoting regional prosperity and stability. Afghanistan will strengthen security and law enforcement cooperation with China so as to ensure the security of trade and personnel exchanges between the countries. China is also making a currency swap deal with Ukraine because the economy has been hit so hard. Ukraine believes if they make a swap agreement worth $2.4 billion, they'll be able to, increase the value of their currency, which has lost about 40% against the US dollar in 1 year, because the Ukraine economy is completely falling apart. China has made 24 bilateral agreements with India. And we can see right now the two sides have signed the agreements, and these include mining, railway, industrial park, urbanization, and training. We also see China is making deals with Brazil, helping them with a $50 billion injection into their infrastructure projects. And they want to build airports, they want to build ports, they want to build a railway and a highway system. And right now, China is Brazil's biggest trading partner. China is currently the largest importer of agricultural products in Brazil. And basically, we can see right now that they are doing deals with Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela, along with Russia, and the U.S. is sitting on the sidelines right now. And we understand that China, they are continually purchasing a huge amount of gold. So is Russia. United States, I think they sold off all their gold. I mean, these are the reports. We don't know for sure because the Fed will not allow anyone to audit the gold. And that should send up red flags right there and then, because if they had nothing to worry about, they would just let them in and take a look at the gold. And every time a country wanted their gold back, it seemed the Fed always had a problem in returning their gold. But a Chinese economic observer, Jin Xiao, noted that former U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Alan Greenspan once said that the renminbi could become very powerful in today's financial system if China would convert U.S. $4 trillion dollars into foreign reserves, in the U.S. $4 trillion in foreign reserves into gold. And if they did that, China then could potentially crash the U.S. dollar with 30,000 tons of gold. Alistair McLeod, head of the research for gold and money, states that China could have easily piled up 25,000 tons of gold between 1982 and 2003, meaning its gold reserves may have reached 30,000 tons. And we have to remember what we're seeing here. They know the dollar is collapsing. They know they're hedging their bet by continually purchasing gold. This is why Russia's doing it. And by the way, Alistair McLeod is going to be a guest on the X22 Report Spotlight next week. And as we lead up to that point, I will let you know when that is uploaded and ready to be viewed. So if you have any questions for Alistair, you can use my email address, contact us at x22report.com. Just put down your question, what you would like to ask, or you can go to the x22report.com and just go to the part where it says contact us, and you can fill out the form, and I will go through all the questions, and I will ask Alistair any questions that you have. Now, I just want to get into what is going on with the trial with the Boston bomber, and we can see today in the corporate media that he is going to get the death penalty. And we understand that this was a false flag event. We understand that he was actually not really responsible for this. And I placed a picture on the x22report.com site on YouTube. You'll see the picture there of him wearing the backpack, and Kraft International wearing a backpack, and the backpack that was reported, which had the explosives, and it looks nothing like his backpack. His was more of a whitish gray, and basically if this photo was shown to the jury, it would have been reasonable doubt. And we know that the FBI, who said they have all this video footage, had no video footage. They didn't show any of it. And we can see right now this was a complete setup, and they're getting rid of the one person that really knows what went down, and they're going to put him on death row. And we can see that the government and those powers, those people who are controlling the system right now, really don't care who lives or who dies, as long as they keep their agenda on track. Now, I saw a lot of the things that they were doing in the Boston bombing, and a lot of it had nothing really to do with evidence. They show, pictures of people getting hurt, but that's not evidence. That's the after effects. The evidence is when you actually show the person doing it or linking it directly to him. And this evidence of him wearing a different backpack than the one that was used, and the one that was used matches perfectly to the Kraft military asset, there's reasonable doubt. And that's all you need to get someone off. And they didn't use that whatsoever. And we can see right now there will be an innocent person who will be killed for their agenda. Now, we understand that the Patriot Act is coming up and it will expire, and we see the House, voted in the U.S. Freedom Act, which really doesn't do anything. It's all smoke and mirrors. And we know that that was introduced to get rid of all the lawsuits, which is going on right now. But McConnell is pushing to have the Patriot Act, which is in complete violation of the Fourth Amendment. They want to extend this to July 31st. McConnell has introduced a fast-track extension of the Patriot Act that would only reauthorize the spying until July 31st. Now, why would they want to do this? Is it because they're waiting for the U.S. Freedom Act to be voted on and they still have to spy on the people? They're going to spy on the people no matter what. And of course, they're using the Patriot Act to say this is legal, but of course, court rulings are saying this is completely unconstitutional. And this is why there's lawsuits going on right now, but he would like to extend it. And we understand that the United States government, the Spanish government, the German government, the French government, the UK government, they're all trying to chip away at the people's rights. And they're doing whatever they possibly can to enact laws to get rid of the rights. And we see out in the UK, David Cameron is taking this a step further. What he's saying is that if you do not agree with government, basically, you will not be able to speak freely. The measures basically would give the police powers to apply to the High Court for an order to limit the harmful activities of an extremist individual. The definition of harmful is to include a risk of public disorder, a risk of harassment, alarm, or distress, or creating a threat to the functioning of democracy. A risk of public disorder or a risk of harassment, alarm, or distress. Think about this for a second. Pretty much 90% of all speech could be classified as posing a risk to all of those things. It's basically banning any criticism of the government. This is what they want. They want everyone to agree with the government. Well, that's not what free speech is. Free speech is to disagree with what the government is doing, to have the choice and the ability to express yourself with disagreement. Because if we all agree, you don't need freedom of speech. Just say, yes, I agree. That's not freedom. They will include a ban on broadcasting and a requirement to submit to the police in advance any proposal publication on the web and social media or in print. The bill will also contain plans for banning orders for extremist organizations which seek to undermine democracy or use hate speech in public places, but it will fall short of banning on the grounds of provoking hatred. Theresa May wants to ban nonviolent extremist groups that fall short of the current threshold for being banned as terrorist-related organizations. Think about that very closely. Essentially, she is saying nonviolent groups that are currently not breaking any type of law should be criminalized by creating new laws. Once this process begins, it will continue to be expanded until pretty much every form of free speech expression, other than the government propaganda, all of it will be banned. That is what they want. They just don't want this in the UK. They're already doing it in Canada. They're doing it in France, in Australia, here in the United States. A little bit tougher because we have the Bill of Rights. But they are definitely moving in this direction. Also, she notes that the new laws are necessary to combat groups that undertake activities for the purpose of overthrowing democracy. Well, isn't this what these governments do in other countries, where they go in and they have a coup d'etat and they oust the elected government to put in their puppet governments? I mean, think about what they're trying to do here. They want free speech, free expression completely banned. They want a bunch of controlled robots to agree with the government propaganda, period. That's it. The end. Why do you think here in the United States they've been setting up these caged-in areas where they say, this is where you can speak freely? But free speech is everywhere. And it doesn't matter. Free speech is hate speech. Free speech is speech that is very friendly. Free speech is anything that you want it to be. There's nothing that can stop anyone from speaking freely. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen. But once we give the control to someone to say, I don't like that type of free speech, or I don't like that, it's no longer free speech. And this is what we're seeing with these governments. They're trying to control and trying to convince you what is speech which is allowed. But that's not what free speech is. Free speech is you can say anything you want. And if people or the government doesn't like it, they don't have to listen. If you don't like listening to me, don't listen. Period. That's it. That's all you have to do. It sends a message. If thousands upon thousands of people don't listen, it sends a message saying, we don't believe what you're saying. And this is what's happening with the government. People are sending the message, and they're not listening to the corporate media. They're not listening to the government. They're countering the government's arguments, saying, no, we don't believe what you're saying because you're not telling us the truth because we have other evidence. And the governments around the world do not like this. And you can see they're pushing this as hard as they possibly can. Now, out in Ukraine, what are we seeing? We're seeing their economy is completely contracting. It has contracted the first quarter of this year by 17.6%. So the United States government, central bankers, came into this country, had a coup d'etat, removed the leader, put in a puppet government, started a war, killed thousands upon thousands of people, split the country up, handed over the gas industry to Biden's son and John Kerry's friend, FBI, CIA in the country, looted the country, stole their gold, destroyed their economy. What's the problem? And the people, who cares about them? This is what the U.S. did to Ukraine. They did it to Iraq. They did it to Libya. They did it to Lebanon. They did it to Yemen. They've done it to many, many countries in the world. And every time they go into a country, there is always a humanitarian crisis. We've seen this time and time again. Now, Ukraine, once again, wants to become the world gas exporter. And we can see the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, is out there saying that, yes, Kiev can achieve this goal. And this was their plan all along, to capture the entire natural gas system there. And this is why, as soon as they had the coup d'etat, we had Biden come in with his son, put on the board of directors. We had Kerry, his friend that he went to college with, also put into the company. We have investors coming in, actually investing in the natural gas system there. And Russia, of course, was not invited. And what they're trying to do is basically they're trying to make money off of this entire thing. This was the plan here. Well, it's also a strategic plan. And they were looking at this, saying this would help the EU because we would put Ukraine on the EU system, but the economy's falling apart. So it's not really going to help. It would be great because it borders Russia. It's a strategic location where we get the Black Sea ports, which didn't work out. And we'd have all that production of coal in the southeastern area. And that didn't work out either. So everything they're doing is not working out in Ukraine. And we can see that John Kerry visited Russia, trying to convince them that, listen, we're about to do something. You need to back off a little bit. We see that the United States is out there saying, the Minsk II agreement is the only peace deal, and Russia and Ukraine and the southeastern people, it has to be followed. But I don't hear anything about Kiev receiving penalties if they don't follow it, because they've not been following it. They haven't done any of the points on the Minsk II agreement. And I believe that this is a complete setup where they're going to set up the southeastern people and Russia saying, they violated the Minsk II agreement. How they will start the offensive, we don't know at this point in time, but we can see they've been building up for this. Now, something might stop it along the way, but at this point it seems like it's still on track. And I don't think they're going to back off anytime soon. It might look like they've taken a pause, because they have, because they need to rebuild their armed forces. They need them trained. They need the lethal weapons to come in. And we've seen this happen in Syria, where they took that time period, and now they're ready to go back into Syria. Now, out in Ukraine, the Kiev authorities have approved a major new program to isolate Russia. And they're going to construct this enormous barrier. They're going to equip it with anti-tank ditches, remote-controlled weapon stations. They intend to spend $200 million on the grand plan. There will also be 4-meter wide, 2-meter deep anti-tank ditches a lateral route and a drag road, remote combat modules, fortified sectors, observation posts, CCTV cameras, communication towers, and alarm systems. They're doing this to keep Russia out and the southeastern people and the rest of the people inside the country. Basically, the country is going to become a prison. And that wall is going to look like a prison wall to keep everyone inside and Russia out. And this is what they're doing. It looks like John McCain was asked to be on Ukraine's International Advisory Council, but the U.S. Constitution forbids it, so he really can't do it. Now, do I think in the back channels that he has something to do with Ukraine? Absolutely. Of course. But it seems that right now the U.S. Constitution will not allow a senator to do this whatsoever. And we see that NATO's right now is involved with Ukraine. And Russia is saying that the attendance of Kiev officials in the NATO spring session has thrown into question the Ukrainian government's commitment to adhering to the second round of the Minsk peace agreements. And we can see right now Poroshenko is saying a lot of things. And the U.S. government has been talking to Poroshenko saying, whoa, slow down there. Tap that down a little bit. And he's been retracting a lot of what he's saying. I mean, again, John Kerry talked to Putin. We don't know exactly what was said, but I think they're trying to calm the situation down temporarily until they have everything in place and then move with this major offensive. And we can see that Russia is looking at the situation and they realize that they are definitely getting ready to do something and they're not taking any chances, because we know Poroshenko and a lot of the other government officials in Ukraine have said that they will not stop until they retake southeastern Ukraine, and then they will move into Crimea. And Russia right now is going to boost their defense in Crimea because of what NATO is doing. They're building up all around Russia with more troops, more military assets, and right now it looks like they are going to bring in military assets into Crimea. We had the discussion yesterday about how the U.S. will be sending the B-1 bombers to Australia to basically protect that area from China because of rising tensions. And right now, the U.S. officials say, no, we misspoke. We're not sending the B-1 bomber out because of China. We're just sending it out there. And it seems like a lot of the government officials in all different countries are misspeaking at this time, because it seems like they're letting the cat out of the bag, and they're saying, no, it's not. China's not the problem. We're not provoking anyone. We're not getting ready for anything. And from everything that we're looking at, we can see, yeah, they are. They're moving military assets into the Pacific to contain China. They're starting something up in the Spratly Island area. They're provoking China. They're gonna maybe start patrolling that area with U.S. ships, even though, the U.S. has no claim to any island there whatsoever. They're looking to provoke in that area. They're looking to provoke Russia. They're looking to provoke Syria, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela. Wherever they can start a war, they will do it, because guess what? All the players are the same. If it starts in one area, it will cascade and go to Russia. It will go to China. And you have to remember, if NATO is attacked, all 28 nations have to come in and join the war. And they know this. This is in their documentation. And we can see this is what they've been building up for. Now, even with Iran, even though they're with the P5+1 peace talks about their nuclear weapons, which this has nothing to do with, it has to do with their central bank, it has to do with putting the dollar on their natural resources, they're still continually trying to provoke Iran. And we can see by the Maersk Tiger ship and this Singapore flagged vessel that they're still pushing this. And we reported yesterday that Iran might have, shot off the bow of the ship and warned it in international waters. And there's a reason for this, because they're saying that this ship ran into an Iranian oil rig and they were fleeing the scene. I mean, They damaged something and they were leaving the scene. It's almost like a hit and run. And the Iranian government wanted help from the other governments to return the ship, to answer for what they've done. They said the collision has caused 300 million of damage. But of course, the corporate media and everything else is out there pushing that, look, Iran is becoming very dangerous in these waters. This is the second time it happened. And this is what they're pushing at this time. Obama is making sure that the Gulf states are feeling secure by saying, yes, we will be setting up a GCC ballistic missile defense architecture. Even though we're working out a peace negotiation with Iran, we will bring in all the weapons to protect you from Iran. I mean, this doesn't even make sense. Because, like I've always said, the goal is always the same. The goal is to get into their banking system and to put the dollar on their natural resources. The same thing with Syria. Their tactics might change. So if the peace deal doesn't work out for them, guess what? They will resort to attacking Iran. And this is why they're putting all this into place at this time. We see right now that a U.S. official is going to be visiting Lebanon to assess the implementation of military assistance and training programs. Again, Lebanon is currently facing attacks by the people of Lebanon who want their country back. The same thing's happening in Yemen, in Libya. We see it in Lebanon. We see it in Iraq. And right now, the U.S. is bringing in more military assets, bringing in more aid into Lebanon. In February, they dropped off about $25 million into Lebanon to help out with the situation. And of course, in Detroit, the water's being shut off. Maybe that $25 million could have been been used here in the United States to help those people. That would have been nice, but again, the government does not care about the people at this time. We also see Iraqi officials said, yes, our military planes drop weapons to the Islamic State. It was a mistake. The U.S. does it. It's a mistake. Everyone is doing this big mistake where they're dropping off military assets to the Islamic State. Well, it isn't a mistake. This is being done on purpose. Because the Islamic State is the proxy army for the U.S., Israel, UK. And they're using them. Right now, we can see they're building up the propaganda to get into Syria. Obama right now is saying that, yes, the U.S. will start and they will help investigate reports of chlorine bombs in Syria. President Obama said, if reports of chlorine gas attacks in Syria were confirmed, the United States would work with international community to put a stop to them. And we're working with them right now. And actually, we're calling upon Russia to stop Syria from using the chlorine bomb. So now they're putting it on Russia to stop Syria, just like they're putting it on Russia to stop the people in southeastern Ukraine. So you see where this is going. They're building the propaganda so they can just go ahead and blame Russia if they don't stop this. And we know that Assad is not using chlorine weapons. Again, we understand that the Islamic State has the chlorine weapons. They've been using it all along in Syria. And what they do is they turn it around and blame it on Assad, just like they did with the sarin gas. And then we come to find out that, the Free Syrian Army had a whole cave set up with Syrian gas. And when MIT did the trajectory of the missile, it came from the Free Syrian Army. So we know right now that all of this is fake, phony, and false. We see that Baghdadi is back. And he's calling on all supporters to join him. They're building up the propaganda once again. We have warnings in Australia. The U.S. Embassy in Australia issued a security alert to its citizens today, warning them of a potential risk of terrorist attack occurring in the country. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see something happen in Australia. And this is to pull all these countries back in to the fight and also to implement new bills, new laws to get rid of the rights of the people and put more troops on the ground. We see DHS is out there warning that the Islamic State in Belgium plot could be a roadmap for a U.S. attack. They are building this entire thing up to convince you the Islamic State is ready to come to the U.S. And once this does occur, where we see these physical attacks, it could be maybe a dirty bomb, chemical weapon in the cities. They will then turn it and say Russia, North Korea, Iran, Syria, China hit our financial system. We already hear talks of QE4, even though they're continually doing quantitative easing. And I've said this a long time ago. When we are hit with this big event, which they're building up to, and the financial sector is hit, and you have to remember, they're putting up a disaster site in Chicago, just in case something happens in New York. The Treasury is holding cash on hand just in case there's some type of disaster. NORAD is moving into Cheyenne Mountain. They have the kill switches in the stock exchange, the BAT system, the NASDAQ system to stop the market from coming down. They have the bail-in documents ready. So when another country hits the United States and brings down the financial system, of course it will be an inside job. We all know this. They can blame it on another country, and the Federal Reserve, the central bank, can come in and say, listen, we're going to help out. We're going to create money. We're going to bail and help bail out the system and help the system once again. But what we need to do is we need every single person to help us. We're going to have to lock down the banks at this point in time because we don't know if there's going to be another cyber attack. The banks are insolvent at this time. The FDIC cannot cover the losses. Actually, they don't even cover the losses because they were cyber attacked. The banks didn't actually fail. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to restrict the movement of cash. So we're going to put in capital controls. We're going to then go into your account. Now don't worry, we're only going to take 8 to 10%. This is what they told the people in Cyprus, and they actually took 47%. And we'll replace it with worthless bank stock. So you're guaranteed, or we'll replace it with treasury bonds. You're guaranteed to have that money. You just can't access it right now. And we'll keep this in effect until we can bring the system up and running once again. And this is where Congress, the president, will be making announcements of how dare another country do this. This is an act of war, and we know the NSA chief said, listen, if somebody cyber attacks the United States, we can respond with weapons. Real weapons. And by doing this, this is an act of war, and we must respond. We must go to war. And you can see how this would play out. You can see what they're preparing for. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.